Hi, everyone. I'm John Lux. I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida, and welcome to Film Florida Friday. Film Florida Fridays are interactive conversations about current topics, initiatives, and relationship building in Florida's screen production industry. Today, we're having a discussion about screenwriting. In a moment, our panelists will introduce themselves. We'll ask some questions. During that time, we're going to ask everybody to keep their microphones on mute to avoid background noise. After we've gotten through our initial questions, as always, we'll open it up to the audience for questions and conversation. At that time, please use the hand raising function under the React button on Zoom so we can call on you. We're going to ask everybody to keep their questions and comments brief in the interest of time and out of the fairness to others that want the opportunity. Film Florida Fridays are always free to attend, but we hope you'll consider donating $20.24 for our 2024 fundraising campaign. The donation link will be posted in the chat box, and you can always find that as well on our website. And with that, let's start with some introductions. So let's go around the grid here and have our panelists introduce themselves. Jaimie, why don't you go first?
Hey guys, my name's Jaimie Engle. I live in Satellite Beach, Florida. I've been writing since I was like 7, really bad stuff. And I started screenwriting in 2021, and my first movie, Just Jake, is on Up TV. And I'm super excited to share screenwriting with you guys. So thanks for being here.
Excellent. Matt, how about you?
Hi, all. Matt Wohl, filmmaker and screenwriter. I'm also the first vice president of Film Florida. I have my MFA in screenwriting. My short films and scripts have won some awards. I wrote and directed a feature film just before the pandemic. And I have chaired several film programs, and I currently am a full-time professor in the graduate program at Full Sail University.
Excellent. And Scott.
Good morning, everybody. John, thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. My name is Scott Gehrs. I've been writing for a very long time, but not necessarily in screenwriting. I started out as a technical writer. I've worked in education as a university professor for a number of years, run a business, and turned my attention to screenwriting because I wanted to do something fun several years ago. So I've been working on doing a lot of writing assignments. I work in features and TV, and I'm happy to be here today. Glad to be with everyone. Looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent. So Jaimie, let's start with you. You've written many books in addition to your screenwriting work. How did you discover your love for writing novels, and how did that skill set help eventually moving into the filmmaking side?
Oh, so when like in 2001, I was at film school and I got pregnant. I would not recommend that. So that was really what brought me into writing books.
Which part? Getting pregnant or film school?
The pregnant part.
Okay.
Because it was 2001. I mean, it's a different playing field. There was no way you could work in Hollywood from Florida then. So I was really bummed about not being a writer, but I loved being a mom. And a buddy of mine said, "Hey, why don't you write?" And I said, "It's going to be really bad." And he said, "Yeah, and then it'll get really good." So I wrote my first book. Since then, I've written almost 24 books and published them, and just really learned a lot about marketing, self-publicity, sales, story. And I definitely know that as a novelist, you can tell a very good story because you have to have the full 300 pages at least. So I find that being a novelist allows me to envision the entire universe. I feel a little bit deeper, and then being able to pull out what's not my lane and allow the director and the cinematographer and the craft services and wardrobe to do their part. But I love being able to play every role and doing all of that. So having a book version of the script really allows me to still tell my story and tell it exactly how I imagine it.
And so did you all along want to transition from novelist to screenwriter, or did that kind of happen organically? Okay.
No, when I was in 3rd grade or 4th grade, I was sick. So I recorded Back to the Future, The Wizard of Oz, and Grease. Don't ask why my mom let me watch Grease in the 4th grade. And I wrote down all the words, and I had no clue I was screenwriting, but I wrote down what everyone's line was. And then in middle school, I started acting. I know, shocker, right? And I loved that, but I was really bad at it because I laugh a lot. And but I fell in love with being on set, and so that just sort of worked its way into, you know, having a family, graduated high school, and then the bug bit me again, and I was like, okay, I want to do this again. I want to write movies. I'm ready. The landscape has changed.
Yeah, cool. Now, Scott, you have a number of projects in development. Share a little bit about some of your most recent ones. I think it's The Advantrix, which is a dramatic feature, and then Wounds of War, which is for TV or streaming.
Sure, the Aviatrix, both of which are period pieces, World War II specifically. Since they're both in development, I can't go into too much detail about the plot, et cetera, but they both came to me as writing assignments from colleagues of mine that I've either worked with before. I've got a multi-tiered marketing that I like to use. This landscape, I think you kind of need it. Email, calling people, making relationships, going to events, and so forth. So these are folks that I had met a long time ago, got to know a little bit better over time, maybe attended a seminar with or went somewhere. And eventually it came to the point where one of the co-writers had come to me and said, you know, we're having a problem. The director is giving us these notes. We don't understand them. We're kind of spinning. We hit the dead spot on the wheel. Can you give us a hand? So I said, sure, sounds like an interesting project. Talked to my agent, set up a deal. And originally I went in for the feature film to do just a clean polish. I looked at it and I said, you know what? Honestly, I think it's going to be a little bit more than just a polish. It's going to need a little deeper cleanse, a rewrite, and a polish. They said, okay, we'll do your best. Went through, took a look at it, did a polish, sent it out for coverage, got the coverage back, said, hey, you came pretty close to it, but you were right. You need to rewrite. So went back and did that. And the process has been a lot of fun because being able to drop right in the middle of the action when something's already pre-developed and you've already had a number of different people working on it is really interesting to me. I really like and enjoy the challenge that comes along with writing assignments. And there's a specific issue. I love doing specs, but I also like doing writing assignments because there's a specific issue or issues that other writers have grappled with and that they just need a new perspective. So I went in and basically, you know, tried to give the new perspective. And one of the projects has been sitting around for a couple of years and it's now got some good traction. So we're all feeling pretty good about it. I spent last week in LA going out to different producers and studios and meeting with people, pitching it. And so we got a couple of things in the fire for it. So we're moving along with that. So that was with the feature. With the TV show. Very similar situation. It was kind of languishing around for a little bit, but they again wanted a new perspective to help kick things along. And we took a different approach. It was more of a grounds up. The mandate was, hey, as long as you're honoring history, we can pretty much remake this for what we need. So I said, my suggestion is let's go back to the drawing board. Let's go all the way to the whiteboard. I have this huge one whole wall in my office is whiteboard. I got that, you know, peel off whiteboard stuff that you can write on because I'm kind of a little kid. I like to write on the wall. And we went through and we literally rebroke the entire series. Then we worked backwards to the pilot, rebroke the pilot, and built it up from the ground up from there. Completely collaborative effort with me and the other writers. So it was a lot of fun. Two totally different experiences, but very exciting.
Cool, cool. Now, Matt, you've accomplished a number of different things through your filmmaking work. Talk a little bit about finding your voice in your writing.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things that's kind of become a cliche to find your voice, but it's also cliches are often cliches for a reason. And my sort of first lesson in this actually came in the first screenwriting class I ever took, which was quite some time ago. Clinton was president, so this was a minute ago. And in that class, we were all given the same prompt. And we had, you know, it was one of these classes like once a week. And we all had a week to come up with a story. And I went home and I just thought, you know what, we all have the same prompt. It's all going to be the same story, right? And I sort of beat my head about how I was going to do it differently and how I was going to be able to sort of wow with this story that no one else would think of. And 2 days passed, 3 days passed, 4 days passed, 5 days passed. And then now I'm looking down the barrel of this next class. And then I just thought, screw it. I'm just going to write the same thing everyone else is going to write. And just hopefully the execution is better. And I got to class and there wasn't a single story like mine. We're all incredibly different. And so to me, I think when it comes to finding your voice, the biggest thing is listening to yourself and listening to the things that you care about. So when you come up with a concept, it's really a two-part initial phase. It's sort of what story do you want to tell? But I think the part that gets missed and the part that is your voice is the why you want to tell it. And so a lot of times people will say, why is the story important to you? Or ask some question like that, or why this story, or why are you the person to tell it? And that's really that voice. And that voice is not only how you see the world, but what you want to say about how you see the world. Whether you think the world is a great place, an imperfect place, whether people are inherently good, people are inherently bad, your voice comes out of that view. And then if you lead with that and then just write from an authentic place, once you have that, to me, that is your voice.
Excellent. No, that's a great story. But I like the advice. Jaimie, you wrote a movie called Just Jake, which came out, I believe, last year. Share a little bit about the development process for the project and some of your key takeaways that you've taken from the project.
Sure. So I think the key takeaway for me was don't say no, because once you say no, you're out. You can always find a way, meet a person, network, get an answer. I had never written a script before. I write magical realism books for kids, and my attorney asked for a Hallmark rom-com female lead. And I said, well, let me see what I have. And I took a crash course that weekend from the Hallmark execs on how to write the Christmas rom-com. I wrote 2 scripts in a month, submitted them both, and they wanted to buy the second one. So total unicorn story, I know. But if I had said no, then that would have been the end of the conversation. So there's enough resources and people in Film Florida, for example, where you can find the answer. So the process was it was really cool. Getting that phone call that they wanted to buy it from Brian Bird, who is my producer, was super exciting. And then I was kind of out. They optioned it, bought it. And in the negotiation process, I asked to retain the book rights because I knew that they were going to rewrite the script, change the script, whatever. And I still wanted to tell my story. So they said yes. And so I wrote the novel and sold that to a publisher. And, they went into production pretty quick. It's one of those, cookie cutter rom-coms. So they have it pretty well laid out on timing and how long it takes. And the biggest part, I think, was getting all of the tax credits, which we don't have in Florida, John, as you are aware. So they did film it in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really exciting. And it was fun to watch all the video. I didn't go out there. I didn't go out on set. But just to watch all the, like Rob Mays posted a lot of behind the scenes. And then it came out on TV, and we had a red carpet party at my house, and we played a drinking game. How many lines are Jaimie's? Because there were like 3. It just got changed. So it was still my story. The whole structure of the project was mine. And I was, we're being honest here, right, guys? This is coffee chat. I was pissed because I was like, I didn't have any input in it, and they just changed everything. But my husband was like, okay, what was your goal here? And I said, to have a movie made, to see my name on a screen, to open up the door to the next one. And he said, did you do that? And I said, yeah. And he said, then shut up and go watch your movie. So, I think the other lesson is, like Scott said, this is a collaborative business. So if you can't give away, give up, share, don't do it. Go become a novelist, because then you can write everything. So if you have to understand that you're going to get rewritten, and one day, like Scott, you'll be the rewriter, so just it's a process, and you have to just understand that going into it.
Yeah, good advice there. Jaimie and Scott, you guys are teaming up on a project called The Shell Game, which is an original screenplay from Scott based on Jaimie's thriller novel. It's now being shopped to studios and networks. What has the collaboration process been like? And give the audience a little bit of a breakdown of the process of adapting a book for a screenplay.
Shall you, Scott?
Sure. Well, the process has been nothing less than amazing. Jaimie is fantastic to work with. It has been fun from minute one. I feel like Jaimie and I have become important parts of each other's support network, as well as becoming really good friends, on top of originally being great collaboration partners. And I feel like every time that we talk to each other, we're just exploding with ideas. Hey, I would like to work on this. What are we going to work on next? Just last week we were chatting about what are we going to do next together. So for me, the collaboration process has been nothing less than amazing. And Jaimie's got great material to start with. So a lot of her original stories, I just look through the idea and I'm like, man, this is fantastic. So it just kind of lights me on fire to work with her.
Yeah, cool. Matt, I want to talk to you about one of your projects, Scooter, which you wrote, produced, and directed. It had distribution in some theaters and is available on some streaming networks right now, streaming platforms. Talk about the project. I know we're focused on screenwriting here, but I want you to talk a little bit about the process, the entire process, from writing all the way through securing distribution.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people will probably take from this is that all of our stories are unicorns, right? And so people ask me sort of my process, and I'm always happy to share it. And I'm sometimes sort of not sure exactly what the nuggets in there that are helpful, because it's not in some ways a replicatable process, but there are some things that you can. And so before I get into the story, the first thing that you can do is treat everything like it's real and say yes, just like Jaimie was saying. If you don't treat things like they were real, nothing will ever be real for you, and it'll all be this concept of a thing in the future. And so the story started when I was living in Vermont, and I had a friend who was a producer who was really interested in found footage, and he wanted me to write a found footage film for him. And I said, I'm not your guy. Like, I don't do found footage. I kind of would rather take a bullet, frankly. I like writing like a found footage is like, that sounds horrible to me. And then as happens, like one night at 3 a.m, I just sat up in bed, and John, if you have to bleep this out later, that's fine. But I just went, oh, fuck, I figured it out. And I realized how I would do a found footage film. And it was sort of and again, sort of that voice. I found how I would do a found footage film with my voice. That production company ended up folding, but that idea was still out there. And I still like kind of all of a sudden I was like, maybe I could write a found footage film because I really like this idea. Fast forward to living in Miami. And this is another thing too, sort of Scott talked about assignments. If you can get an assignment, they're great. Sometimes you do specs. I didn't actually write the script. It just sat as an idea. Like sometimes I write a spec script, sometimes I don't. It's always better when you're writing and there's a paycheck, but the spec stuff is we do for fun. That script just sat on a shelf as an idea. And I got hired to write a script in Miami. And the director who hired me showed that script to somebody else, right? Which I didn't even know. But all of a sudden, I was actually on Instagram, and I got a message on Instagram that said, "You don't know me, but I like your work and I'd like to fund your next film." So of course I thought, well,
Scam.
That's a scam, right? And then I was like, no, but you have to treat everything like it's real or nothing is. And so I reached out, and they had a small budget, but they said, look, if you have a script for this amount of money, I'll get you the funding. And so I pitched him this found footage because it was the one thing that I had that could be shot for that budget. And they loved the idea. So then we shot it. We shot in a ridiculous time frame. You can't do what we did, right? So this is the other thing, but planning. I sat down with my DP, Pej Jatala. He's the chair of the film program at Broward College. He and I are very good friends. We just sat down and said, how are we going to make this thing work? And because it was found footage and the characters were basically YouTubers, we put cameras on all the characters. So every time I said action, we were getting between 3 and 5 takes. So it was more about, as long as we had one take that was solid, we had 3 to 5 angles of that immediately. And so we were able to move very quickly and shot in 11 days because of that. We made our day every day. The other thing I will say, as a director producer, we went over 10 hours only one day. And we never even hit 12. You don't get good work from people once you hit 10 hours. I know there's that tendency to just keep going. Don't. Everyone was refreshed every day. I even gave everybody a day off in the middle of the shoot just to refresh, and they came back psyched. And we were able to shoot in a way that people just thought we couldn't. Then once we had a cut, I went out to AFM. I actually went out to AFM the year before, knowing that I was going to go back with a film. So I went to AFM the first year, looking at who was buying what kinds of things they wanted to see. And because I wasn't selling anything or asking them to buy anything, I had really good, open, frank discussions with a lot of distributors. And so got some amazing information. So then I was able to take that back the next year. And we actually got in a place where we didn't have a ton of meetings, but we probably met with, I think about, I want to say around 12 distributors, and pretty quickly we had 4 that were interested in distributing it, and we sort of weighed which one was best. In hindsight, I'm not sure we went with the right choice, but it wasn't a bad choice, but we went with the one we did. And yeah, then we had limited theatrical, and it's still on platforms. Sorry, that was really long, John.
That's all right. That was good. Good story.
Apologize.
I like it. Yeah, no, it's okay. We're gonna jump. I want to do a couple of round robin questions here for all 3 of our panelists, and then we'll go back and do some of the other ones. But so each of you have had some experience as an educator. Matt, obviously, currently. What drew you to provide resources for other writers, and what was the kind of some of the biggest mistakes you see and you've tried to teach? So Scott, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, I worked in education, as I mentioned before, teaching as a university professor in technical communication, programming, and all sorts of other stuff in a completely different life. So one of the things that I've always found valuable about education is the ability to give back. So I always tried to bring a lot of my business experience and current relevant, experience and things like that, watch out for these potholes and so forth, to my students in real time as I was going through them. So for me, the biggest thing is to be able to give back, because I've always appreciated when other people that have already been down that section of the road let you know, oh, there's a big pothole over here. You don't want to step in that. You'll find your own way. But being able to avoid the pitfalls and the potholes and the really big gotchas that'll take you out of the game, that's been huge for me. So I try to always give back where I can. And some of the mistakes I see, can you rephrase the exact specific question about what the mistakes part was? I want to make sure I answer it exactly.
What are some of the mistakes that you are trying to help others avoid when they're starting out?
Okay, specifically things like Jaimie mentioned earlier and Matt mentioned earlier about collaboration. If you don't get the whole, it's a collaborative game, you're going to be out of it really quick. In a room, it's not, nah, that idea sucks. That just doesn't come out of your mouth. It's a yes, and we could do this with that. It's, if you need to, it's redirect it, if and add to it. It's all collaborative. You're building on things because you're going to go through 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 20 bad ideas before you hit on that one idea that just rocks, and everybody in the room goes, yeah, that's it. And the thing that I've been really excited about is when I get into a room and my idea spurs someone else to come up with the idea, because it's very rare that I come up with the idea. It's just that building process. So hope that answered the question.
It did. And Jaimie, I know a lot of you do a lot of educating now, even if it's kind of like informal education. What is it that pulls you to it and wants you to get out there and help others?
I think it's just, I love story because I love connection, and it's really fun to write a book. It's really fun to write a movie, but like, it's just me and the voices in my head. So it's like, I need people. And I really just love people tell me I inspire them. So I have just fallen into that role. And if I can inspire somebody, I get messages all the time. I saw your post, and I decided that I was going to jump back into that book I haven't touched in 10 years. Thank you so much. And like, that just makes me feel like I have a purpose. I'm making a difference, because what we do as writers is to create stories that people can fall into and escape their lives, and maybe leave feeling like they can become a better person and the world can be a better place. So when I educate, when I work with a screenwriter, when I adapt a novel, when I coach, I feel like there's a connection, and if I can watch somebody have an aha moment, it's just very powerful because then they can pay that forward.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing that I feel like, as far as the things that I see, is impatience. People write a movie and or they write a book and they're like, okay, I'm done. So where's Scorsese? And it's like, he ain't knocking on your door. So like, be patient, like educate yourself, get better, take podcasts, take webinars, go and meet people, write more. I mean, I meet people that everybody has an idea. We all know that, but I meet people that they have one script and it's like, go write 10 more, like just keep writing, just don't stop. Just get it all on paper, back it up with IP, get it out to people, get feedback. And then my other big piece of advice is just don't be an a-hole. Like, just be kind. You don't know the person that you're being an a-hole to. They might run a major studio and now they don't like you because you weren't kind to them when you were above them. You just be kind to people because you never know who you're going to serve and who's going to serve you. And and I also think that's part of my mission statement, is to always have a heart of service. I love helping, I love serving, and I feel like if I'm doing that, then this is all fun. Writing is fun, but it doesn't change the trajectory of people's eternities, but that does. So I love my job.
Yeah, you never know who you run into. Sometimes the most unassuming people have the most zeros in their bank account and maybe funding your project. So, Matt, you were in education, then you were out of education, and now you're recently back in education. Obviously, that's a specific choice you made. Why did you want to get back in education, and what are you trying to instill in your students?
Well, I missed it, right? Like, frankly, just almost every job I've had in my life has had some element of training or education to it. And my position that I had before this one, it wasn't the place I wanted to be. And so then I was just like, I'm leaving education, but it didn't take long for me to realize that I really missed it. And even during that time where I wasn't a actual faculty member, I still did have assignments where I was helping people. I was mentoring people and helping them with their projects, or I was getting assignments to co-write or rewrite. So there's still sort of education under the surface. It just wasn't my main job title. I think that aside from just loving to teach and loving to help people, it's really, really hard, this business. Whatever you want to do, write, direct, produce, props, it doesn't matter. It's a very, very hard business. And I've seen, and I've had these instructors, but I've seen people be so almost dismissive to the people that want to learn. And it just is crushing when I see that. And so the approach I take is I want people to understand that it's difficult, not to discourage them, but to say, hey, let's get there. Let's get to that bar. And let's not, and some professors just sort of, and not even professors, just educators, and go, okay, well, that was good enough. But this is an industry where good enough isn't good enough. And we need to be able to say that and inspire people, like Jaimie was saying, to go beyond good enough and get to that place where their work is great. And it does just take writing and writing and writing. A mentor of mine, he was one of the founders of the UCLA screenwriting program, he said, you got to just write. And everybody has between 2 and 4 bad screenplays in them. So just write those and get that out of the way so you can get to the good ones that are locked inside you behind that. And so that's my goal in educating, is not to discourage, but to keep encouraging people so they can get to that place where they can unlock those great scripts and unlock those great stories. Because I can write a couple screenplays a year, right, and tell a couple stories a year. But if I can educate 50 people in a year, then that's so much more story out there, and story is going to save us. And if, this week was a tough week for a lot of people, and story is what's going to help us get through it, and story is what's going to help us inspire to move on.
Good. I want to jump in. You guys have kind of touched on some of these, but I want to get it kind of officially for people that are, maybe taking notes. What are your best tips for crafting an original screenplay? Jaimie, you start.
I think you should have a full story synopsis in place. I just find the page count is so short that you can go on a funky tangent and then you're like 90 pages in and you're like, well, I'm barely at the halfway point. And so I think especially in screenwriting, you have to be very streamlined. Like, like Matt said, there's so many ideas in my head, and just having like, well, where am I going? Or what if I go here? And how does this look? I think it's very helpful. And then just writing. I mean, Matt, I think you just said this too. Like, you have one or two great ideas or great screenplays. Like, you have to just write. Just get it on paper. There's no, you have to find the way that works for you, because I know a lot of people, they can't outline. They just have to roll with it and see what happens. So you really just have to find what works for you, and you figure that out by trying a lot of different things. And I also highly encourage some sort of a mentor or coverage person that's not like I'm sending it to a coverage company and I have no clue who's reading it, and they're going to tell me what's bad, and it's actually like the best part of my script, but I don't know. When Scott and I met through LinkedIn, the question he asked me is what can I do to help you, which was amazing. And I said, I need a coverage person. And he connected me with somebody. And it was such a helpful thing that I know I can always send to this person and get a very, very clear A-list quality coverage. So just write, figure out your story. Don't write to trends. Just write what's in your heart. Like Matt said, just write your story and just you have to just write. I don't know. Yeah. It's a stupid answer, but you have to write and write and write and write.
Yeah. Scott, any quick tips?
Yeah, sure. I'm in total agreement with Jaimie. With the exception of the way that I play is I haven't used chat for knocking ideas around, although I'm looking at it. I'm a whiteboard kind of person. I come up with an idea through just play. And I think, oh, that's maybe a cool idea. And then I tinker around with it and I say, it's a cool idea, but is it a high concept? Is it marketable? And then I just drill down all the way through the chain. And once I come up with that, oh yeah, this is really solid. This lights my fire. Then I kind of go through the structure of putting up the scaffolding. And I have to do that, to Jaimie's point, to keep from going off the rails. And for me, it's a very simple process. I picked this up from David Mamet, and I thought he had a brilliant masterclass. And when I first started working on this, I was watching all the who I consider to be really accomplished professionals, Sorkin, Mamet, whoever. I was just soaking it up like a sponge. One of the things Mamet said was, writing's easy. It's kind of like Hemingway. You just sit up at the typewriter and bleed. But if you don't put a destination, you're starting in New York, you're going to Los Angeles, how are you going to get there? And it's as simple as that for me from the scaffolding, and I don't let it get in my way, but I got to kind of know where I'm going, because I will go off the rails. I'm like, oh, that's a great, interesting story. And then all of a sudden, the supporting characters have more interesting stuff than the leads. So I have to kind of have a hybrid model. I have to have the scaffolding structure, but it's got to start for me with play. Otherwise, I'm not excited. Writing assignments are the other direction, actually. I've already got the scaffolding. A lot of the times I've already got the story and the drive shaft, the intention and obstacle, what have you. And then I've got to kind of back engineer it so that I can light my own fire and see how the story, how I can ignite that interest and passion about what's already there, because I have to honor what's already there, but I have to fix it and bump it up and elevate it.
Yeah, makes sense. Matt, any quick tips?
Yeah, I think when you're starting especially, but I think even now, I think I'm a structuralist. So I think having the structure of your story is so crucial. When either students or people who have hired me to do rewrites, when they get frustrated and say, I'm stuck, I can't do it, I ask them, well, how does it match your outline? And not once have they said, oh, I have this, I'm following my outline perfectly. Every single time they didn't have an outline, period. And so one of the things I teach is how not to ever get writer's block. I just don't get writer's block. And I have a set of tools that I use and that I teach so that you never get writer's block. And one of those is knowing your story completely. screenplays are the blueprint for films. An architect doesn't just sit down and go, I'm going to make a building and then just start drawing a building. And it's like, oh, you know what? I thought it was going to be a warehouse, but actually it's going to be a cafe. No, it's going to be a bungalow, right? That hey, I'm going to build a bungalow. And then you start to plan out like, oh, I need 3 bedrooms. You sort of have all those thoughts in there before you start making the blueprint. Otherwise, you're like, oh, this is great. I've got 3 bedrooms. I've got like all this closet space. The kitchens are amazing. We got French doors. You're like, you're ready to go. And someone goes, where are the bathrooms? And you're like, I guess I'm going to have to lose a bathroom or lose a bedroom. And those closets are going to be much smaller. And then you have to restructure everything. The same thing is true in screenwriting. There's this fallacy that you just sort of create in the moment. It actually takes all this fun, creative time to build a structure. And then the actual writing is that unsexy piece where you just sit down and get it all out. And if you start writing before you have that structure, you are destined to have 10, 15 drafts. I was hired one time by a writer. He had 31 drafts because the story wasn't solid in his head. So that was the first thing I did, was said, we're gonna solidify the structure. So know what your story is about. That's the emotional core. Love your characters and know what the conflict is going to be. What's so funny, John, you started this by asking us about the 3 C's. And as I was sitting here, my answer is the 3 C's, like character. I'm going to get it wrong. Character, conflict, and concept. Like it really is the starting point. I never thought about it until today.
Nice. Well, I'm glad I added some value to this discussion. So that's good.
Yeah, it's good, John. Thank you.
So let's stick with you. I mean, are there specific themes that you're drawn to when you want to write?
Yeah, and it's something that Jaimie mentioned earlier, and I didn't even realize this at first. When I was in grad school, I had this assignment, and I sort of poo-pooed it. And the idea was that to come up with a personal theme. And I was like, I'm already writing. I don't need a personal theme. And I was like, well, I'm paying pretty good money to be here, so I'm going to just accept this assignment and really take it in. And what I realized at that point, I'd written about 5 screenplays. And what I realized is that all the screenplays I'd written and all the story ideas I had were really about human connection. And when my characters were connecting well with the people around them, they got the things that they wanted. And when they weren't connecting with the people around them, they weren't getting what they wanted. So I think that human connection is really at the core. So I really like exploring that. And I think also underlying that is a sense of hope. I am still hopeful about things when things don't go well. I still have hope. And again, partly in the writing process, I try to create scenarios when it looks very dire for my characters, but at the end of the day, there's still some silver lining, because I think that's how we all get through the day too, is that no matter how hard life is, there still is some hope at the end.
Yeah, good. Scott, any themes that you're particularly drawn to?
Yeah, it seems it's interesting. I hadn't thought about this previously, except kind of once in a blue moon. But conflict, war, and I have a big thing in my specs of deserts. And it's interesting. I was thinking about that this morning with regards to the question, why I have a lot of things that have desert settings. And it's almost like it's the open playing field for people to have that human connection. There's kind of the desert of existence, or whatever, if you want to tie any significance to it. But what's really important is the character to character, the conflict, the connection, why we fight, how we save ourselves, and redemption. Those seem to be big things that I'm drawn to and hired for, and I hadn't really thought about it until today. So I was really grateful to get the questions about that. So again, same thing, human connection. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Cool. Jaimie, how about you?
I tend to write mostly about like underdogs, or people who maybe think they're an underdog, and just to discover that they're part of something greater than themselves, which again points to the human connection. But almost everything I write has that theme in it. It's usually a hero's journey. And like Scott, I always seem to have like people lost in the woods. I don't know why, but I know there's some weird psychological issue that causes me to constantly put people in the woods and be like, good luck. Let me know how you get out.
Nice, nice.
When you
So,
figure that out, let me know. It might help me.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have something to say here? You're on mute. Matt, you're on mute.
Yeah, I had something I was gonna say, and then the Lost in the Woods comment kind of threw me. But no, what I was gonna say, John, is that the personal theme thing, I think it's a great exercise, and I now have all my master's students do it. It also got me an assignment. There was a producer met with me. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and there was a story that I wasn't sure what I would do to it, and they just sort of pitched it to me on the spot. So I didn't have time to come up with a story take. They literally said, "This is our story. We're struggling. Can you help us rewrite it?" And in that moment, they were looking for ideas, and that's just like, that's a trap. Just so you know, like if you get like giving ideas in the moment, that's sort of like, because whatever they've probably thought of that thing, or they thought of something better, or it's just a hard place to be. So instead, what I said was, this would be my approach. And that's what got me the job, was just me saying my approach and making it about connection. And that's how I would approach a rewrite. And that resonated with the producer, and I got the job.
Sweet. Our friend Julia has some questions in the chat from Kaiser University cinematic arts students. So I'm going to hit a couple of these. Let's start with the legal one. What's the best way to protect your script once it's made from a legal standpoint? Whoever wants to take that, go ahead.
I think I'll start, and then others feel free to jump in. I think that you can do too much with this. Like some people do the copyright thing and all that. When you're just when you have a spec, the simplest thing to do is just register it with the Writers Guild. Initially, I don't do anything beyond that. If things start to move beyond it and there's interest in all that, then I'll go further. But I would say, for the short answer, and so that people aren't spending a lot of money and a lot of time on it, would be just to register it with the Writers Guild of America. They'll send you a certificate and a number, and they store it and basically say that there is a version of your story that was created on this date, and that helps protect it. I think that again, sort of my mentor, who founded the UCLA screenwriting problem, he always said that the best sign of an amateur is someone who's worried about their idea being stolen. That it happens so less frequently than you think. There are so many ideas out there. There are so many different takes on it. So just register it with the guild.
And I would add to that, because that's what I do. I just register with the guild. I would also add, having IP backing gives you another layer, whether that's a comic book, a short story, a novel, a song, something that's published in the world that you can point back to and say, well, these are both from the same story universe. This is a smaller version of this. I have to show this because it'll make sense later. This is my short story collection, The Toilet Papers, right? So I have like 5 scripts that don't have any books that they're based on. So I just published an ebook called IP on Paper as book 2 in this collection. And all it is every script I have, I just jot a quick short story down and I published it. So now officially it has an origin, because it's like a chain of title, like with a house. I now have a chain of title that originates with this published story. So when I sell a script, it will always point back to story by, and there's no question. So whether it works or not, we shall see, but I figure it can't hurt.
Really quickly, just the caveat on that, I would say 100%, but the caveat on this, it's your IP, right? Like,
yes.
So don't make it off a song that you don't have the rights to. Don't make it off a story
that
you don't have the rights to.
Yes.
Like, it has to be something that you own. Don't write things based on other people's stuff and hope you're going to get the rights later, because that's another sort of early mistake that I've seen from people, is that they're like, oh, I'm going to write this, and then if it does well, they're going to give me the rights to their story. Like, that's cute.
Jaimie, I want to stick with you on another question from Julia. Can you talk about the challenges women and people of color face as screenwriters trying to break in the industry?
I think we're actually in a really great place, because there is so much attention and focus on that being an issue in the past. So I find that ironically, the age of most screenwriters making it is between 40 and 50, which is me. And so you have like women over 40 minority, all of these things are, they just help you not to write better, because you have to be a good writer. What they do is they help you really to be able to submit to places to get the visibility that you probably wouldn't have gotten. And that's really all it is. So I would encourage you not to use the fact that we are women or in minority, because we're women and I'm over 40. Don't use that as a crutch or as an advantage. Just use it as an opportunity to be able to open a door that otherwise may have remained closed to you.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, those in the audience, we got a couple more questions here that we're going to hit to. But if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand using the React button down below. You can click on that and then put your hand up, and then we'll call on you. Let's go. What strategies do you use to keep your audience emotionally invested throughout the story, especially in a script that's entirely original and not based on original content, or existing content, rather? Scott, you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, sure. For me, it's all about the intention and the obstacle. What does somebody want? What's in their way? Why is it important to them? I'm a huge fan. Like I said, I literally worship at the temple of Sorkin and Mamet and some what I consider the greats. You got to be emotionally invested in somebody, and it all winds around what's important to that character. Why is it important to that character? Is it life or death? Is it they're in love with somebody they're about to lose? They've got to catch that plane. They've got to go make sure that they get to the dock before the boat leaves. You know, why do we care? And that is what it all breaks down to for me, is understanding what that character cares about. Now, mind you, none of these are real. These are not real people, but these characters reflect things that are important to us as people. So for me, it's trying to get into the shoes of the character to understand what's important to them as a person. So it's kind of a weird thing. You're trying to put yourself in the shoes of somebody that doesn't exist, and you're trying to understand emotions that they're not really feeling. But what you're doing is you're trying, and at least what I try to do is I'm trying to get into the heart of the people that are watching and touch them. And if I can do that, I mean, that's such a bigger task than it sounds like. But if I can do that, then I've entertained them while they're sitting there, and that makes me feel really good, because I want to entertain people all the way through the experience.
Makes sense. Matt, you got something to add?
Yeah, really quickly, like Scott, I think you know, don't feel like you have to go this alone. There's a lot of really, really good writers who've shared their thoughts, right? So there's two really simple things that I use that say probably more than you need to say about, right? Like, this is it. This says it all. One is from Kurt Vonnegut, and he said, all of your characters should want something, even if it's just a glass of water. And then that's going to motivate them. So just make sure your characters always want something, even if it's just a glass of water. And then Neil Simon said something that I teach in every single class, and I use it when we're looking at their work. In every single scene, the audience should have two questions. Why are these two people arguing? And why are they both right? And if you do that, if you actually have some real conflict between your characters, and we don't know who we're rooting for, because in some ways they're both right. If you do that scene after scene after scene, you will keep your audience engaged throughout. If you phone it in and you slack off, then your screenplay is going to slack off, and the audience will be able to sense that.
Nice. I like that. Michael, you have your hand up. Let me add a spotlight. Go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So I've been writing for about 10 years. I've placed in screenwriting contests. I've won screenwriting contests. I've struggled with selling my screenplay and finding literary agents. I've literally never even looked for a literary agent. But how would you guys go about finding a publisher or literary agent and selling your screenplay?
I will jump in because I don't have an agent. I honestly have used LinkedIn to literally network and connect with Scott, other writers, producers, actors. I currently have a contract that I am signing with a Big Five studio through a contact on LinkedIn, where I reached out to the producer and I said, I'm curious about learning more about the company you work for and what you do. Do you have time for a chat? And that led to a year of development and pitching and getting the yes. So I can't say enough things about LinkedIn, and it's just don't be an a-hole.
Yeah.
It's really, I have a presentation. You just go to my YouTube. I've got little things, or reach out to me, but I have a presentation on like how to build your network or build your LinkedIn page, and also how to properly network. So just reach out to me. I'll share that with you.
Thank you.
And Jaimie, can you post your YouTube page in the chat box for everybody?
Yeah, it's my name right here at Jaimie Engle Writes. Just go to YouTube, and there's another Jaimie Engle, but she doesn't look like me and she doesn't do writing. So there's only two of us on
There you go.
YouTube.
Okay. Hopefully we can figure it out.
But I will post it there too. Yeah.
Okay. Dave, you have your hand up too, so I'm going to add your spotlight. Go ahead and unmute and go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, this is a sort of a story of perseverance. I am a member of SAG-AFTRA, and I went over to a friend's house during the election process for board seats, and I was filming a video for her office seat, and I looked at her kitchen table, and she had a stack of letters, about 400 letters, and I went over there after the session, and I was pouring through them. They're from World War II, and it was from a Jewish soldier, her uncle. I was laughing, I was crying, just that the art of writing really was incredible. And so this is about 7 years ago. I found a grant from Broward County. We put on a 2-hour presentation. It was a reader's theater type of thing. I had all the characters from the letters. And finally, we now have an Emmy Award documentarian who's very interested in the project, because it transcends being a soldier. I mean, for one thing, here's a guy that was at Iwo Jima, writing to his parents saying, "Oh, the chow here is awful. The chow here is wonderful. We're having a good time. Everything else." Meanwhile, he actually, in reality, was sitting in a foxhole with dead soldiers all around him. An hour later, he wrote to his brother and said, "Here's the real deal." And it was just like stunning stuff. And so, like I say, now we have a documentarian. These letters are at least 75 years old, sitting in a shed for all that time. So persevere on that. Hopefully there will be something coming of that. I was wondering if, through you, John, if I could leave my email address if anybody wants to see just a quick video I did on YouTube, if any of the participants here would like to see that, and the panel, I would love to share that with them.
Yeah.
And also, I did a thing for when I was working at a radio station. I was production director, and it was a Halloween show called Blood Moon over Miami. A Dracula Comes to Miami story, modern day. And I entered it in the New York Festival International Radio Programs on a whim. And it came in 3rd in the world, beating Australia, beating New York and everything else. So I would also love to share that. I have it on SoundCloud. It's a 1-hour thing, but it takes place everywhere from the Keys, and a necrophile that actually lived in the Keys that was employed by Dracula to bring his dead lover to life. And Stiltsville is another location that we have. So, there's just so many possibilities out there. And like you all, my mind just runs rampant sometimes with cool ideas. And I'd love to share them with you. So like I say, if I may, through John, send my email. And if you would acquiesce, I would love to share it with y'all. Yeah,
absolutely, Dave. Go ahead and send that to me. And you're right. Stories are the most important thing here. Those are great stories. Let me go back to one of the questions in the chat. What's the hardest challenge when crafting a compelling screenplay? How can screenwriters overcome these challenges? Who wants to grab that one? Not all at once.
Sure. I think, a little bit, it's sort of like life. Whatever my challenges in life may not be Scott's or Jaimie's challenges in life. So it's a little bit hard to say what will be the greatest challenge for you. But one of the things that I see fairly consistently is that we love our ideas, and we should love our ideas. But what ends up happening is sometimes we love our ideas too dearly, and then we aren't able to see the holes in it, right? And so that's where the collaboration that people have talked about so much comes in, is having someone to be able to talk to and say, you know what, that just isn't enough story there, or I understand it's clear in your head, but it's not coming across on the page. Because the biggest thing that I see is people, and I've done this too, right? Like, that's how I recognize it also, is we have an idea in our head, and that idea in our head
Writing something that translates to the screen is different than just writing something. I've edited a lot of screenplays, and there's so many times where there's like conversations that just drag, and I'm trying to picture it, trying to imagine what would this look like. Or there's so much detail in the action, that part of the script. Like, you can't do that. It reads different, but just thinking, like, your job as a screenwriter is to, like Matt said, is to draft a blueprint that you hand to a director, and the director feels inspired to see his vision of this building, this movie, this TV show, and then he takes that and he goes and creates it. You're not actually the creator. You are the muse. And you have to realize that going into it, unless you're like, doing your own direction and you're, producing. If you're involved in an indie film and you're doing it all yourself, then that's different. You can write, you can write Pan, you can write Bird's Eye View. But if you're not doing those things, like, you have to understand that you're not writing a story. You are, but you're not writing a story. You're writing a document that you're going to give to a team of people that they're going to spend millions of dollars and years of their lives working on. So did you put enough time into training yourself, into writing, into rewriting, into collaborating? Did you do everything you could to make this worth their time and their money? Because there's hundreds of people that are going to get jobs because of your thing. So did you do everything to make that worth them investing in? And that's something you have to really be honest with yourself, and find people like Matt and Scott to share your script with and say, hey, does this suck? Like, where could I make this better? Where did my ego take over the story? Because that's really what we do as writers. Unfortunately, we can't help it, I don't think.
Those are some really great points, Jaimie. I mean, in the end, it's a business, and sometimes feelings get hurt for good business, and you have to be prepared for that. Yeah.
Thick skin, John. That's the other thing. Like, you're right. It's a business. Like, have thick skin. If you don't have thick skin, and you have to have thick skin and smile about it too, right? Like, I can't remember who it was that they wrote for 10 years. You may be frustrated that you've written for 10 years and haven't been able to get through a single door. The thing you can't do is let people see that when you go to the 11th door or the 12th door. You've just got to keep showing up and keep being optimistic and not going, oh, finally. You just got to keep going and have thick skin.
Yeah.
And if I could add one thing to that, I agree with previous comments with Jaimie and Matt. One of the things that I have never had trouble with, which I feel very blessed that I've never had trouble with this, is hearing no. I had worked as an actor years and years and years ago, and that set me up very well for hearing no. In my mind, a no is just one more step closer to a yes. And I differentiate that it's not personal. And the way that I do it, and this may work for somebody, it may not, so take whatever value you can from it, but it's not about you as a writer. It's about the product that you're currently working on. And I just completely separate that, because otherwise you're going to feel beat up at the end of the day. This morning, just for example, before getting on here, I had a message from my agent that is saying we're making progress with one of our deals. I was real excited about that. And the very next email was somebody who had looked at one of my screenplays months ago, hadn't gotten back to me, and said, we're not interested. And it was as flat as you could get. And I read the second one with just as much excitement as I read the first one. because I've trained myself to say that no is just another step to the next yes, for what it's worth.
Ultimately, regardless of, I mean, you could use this analogy in a lot of things. It's all about putting the puzzle together, and every bit of feedback, every note, every conversation is a piece of that puzzle. And you have enough of those pieces, at some point you're going to put it together and say, oh wow, I finished the puzzle. And that's how you get to your goal. And that, I mean, I personally try and think of it that way in things that I do. That, and I'm certainly not a screenwriter, but I think it works in this case as well.
And John, really quickly, just
yep.
I think a thing to understand about this business is that when you get to a reader, when you get your script into someone's hands, hopefully at a studio or wherever it is, production company, but it also is the same for managers and agents. Everybody is rooting for you. Everybody, they want to read the next amazing script. They don't read it going, my God, I hope this one sucks too. They read it hoping that they're going to read something amazing. That's true. At the same time, there's another thing that's true. It's their job to say no. And understanding that it's their job to say no, you need to get beyond that no. So we already talked about sort of attitude and being positive. If you're not positive, then it's easy to say no. If your formatting is crappy, it's easy to say no. If you have a couple scenes up front in your script where you just don't have that conflict and drama, they're going to say no. I can't remember where I heard it, but someone said, when you're writing, make your first page the best thing you've ever written. Like really make that first page of your script literally the best thing you've ever put on the page. And when you get to page 2, make it better. And if you do that, you're decreasing that chance of that no. But once you understand that it's everybody's job to say no, it's easier to take the no's.
Yeah.
If I could add something out of that, Matt, I agree with those comments 100%. It's the difference between what's required and what's sufficient. What's required are things like what Matt was talking about: formatting, character, intention, obstacle, drive, drama, structure, and so forth. All of those are required. And if you don't have those, go back and make sure that you have them. Until you have all of those, you're not ready to walk through the door. You're not ready to take that next step. But that's not sufficient. What's sufficient is you have all of that, plus you light the reader on fire. When you've got that, you're ready to walk through the door. And then you're still going to get 10 no's.
A lot of no's.
But then you're going to get a yes. And then you're going to be on your way.
Yeah. Scott, how have you seen the role of the screenwriter evolve over time?
Oh, really interesting. I've seen it go from a creative position to much more of a diagnostician. I feel personally like I am going back to my technical communication education because, again, to previous comments, it's very much a blueprint. And it's a much more exacting, from what I've seen. I've never written a novel, but from what I've seen, it's much more exacting science. It's much more science than art in the way compared to a novel. And I feel like I'm blessed in the fact that I look at the structure and I understand the layers, and it's much more technical to me. So I've seen that evolve even more over time because of the advance of technology and the bigger budgets and the fact that it's only gotten more complex and more collaborative. And now with the advent of AI and things like that, how's that going to affect it? I see the role as much more of a puppet master as opposed to just a pure soul of a poet. Now you got to still have the soul of a poet, in my opinion, to be able to connect, because you're ultimately connecting to another person. But the ability to sit down and understand you're writing for a genre and an audience and a budget and layers and subtext and all of these things makes it so complex that in my mind it's much more of a technical feat than an art. And that's the way I see it evolving.
Good. I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to kind of plug whatever we need to plug. So websites, social media, upcoming projects. Jaimie, you go first.
You guys can find me everywhere at Jaimie Engle Writes, jaimieengle.com. If you have questions about your scripts, adaptations, rewrites, coaching, mentoring, anything I can help with, just reach out to me. If I can't help you, I'll find you someone who can. And also, I have a lot of things coming up. So on my website, you can join the Engleverse and read my monthly newsletter. And when I can share what I can share, Scott and I have shell games probably going to be signed soon. We're just waiting for contracts. So we've got some exciting things. I know all of us do. So yeah, but you can just follow along the journey with me. It's so boring by myself. So I would love to have you become an Engle version and join the Engleverse.
Scott, what do you got coming on?
Well, I got a couple of things. I got the feature film Aviatrix that I talked about. We're getting some really good traction on that. We've got 2 production companies that are interested in that. And I've got Winds of War, the TV show, same thing. We've got overseas, we've got some folks that are looking at that. So I'm really excited about that. People can reach me pretty easily, either through Jaimie, who knows how to get a hold of me, or I'm terrible with social media. I haven't spent a lot of time on that, so I don't have a website. I don't have all that, but you can look me up on IMDb Pro. All my contact information is there. I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything, questions, assignments, help, anything and everything I can do. I'm happy, and whenever I've got time, I love chatting with other writers and seeing where I can help other people on their journey and share, their successes.
Matt?
So in terms of things I'm currently working on, there's 2 documentaries, 2 feature-length documentaries that I might be working on. I have worked on docs in the past. I've done some short docs, and I have a feature doc that I'm also very close to getting an editor for, so I can just get that done. I had a couple sort of writing projects I was sort of working on for spec, and then I was talking to a friend who's a producer and financier, and I told him one of the ideas, and he goes, write that, because I think I can get you money for that. So that moved to the top of the heap. In terms of finding me, it's just my name, mattwohl@gmail.com. You can email me. You can also find me on Facebook. I probably need to go back and look at my website, but Traveling Dog Films is the production company's website. It's probably a little outdated, but it's still there. It's still there. But those are some of the ways. And obviously Facebook, feel free to hit me up. And also I realized there are actually some people that I've worked with and mentored that are in here today. So you know who you are. Hi, how you doing? And the last thing, John, I'm going to plug is a Film Florida thing. We do have an Emerging Filmmakers Fund, and the Emerging Filmmakers Fund is for filmmakers who are trying to get their projects off the ground. So if you're a screenwriter and you have something short and you want to getting it made, then please do that. And part of that process is we do offer mentoring, and I have helps people with their projects through that process as well. So the Emerging Filmmakers Fund is definitely sort of a good thing to look at.
Good reminder. Thanks for that, Matt. I appreciate that. So that's going to wrap up another edition of Film Florida Friday. Thanks to Jaimie, Matt, and Scott for being with us. And of course, thanks to all of you for joining us today. Thanks to Katie Collins for helping me wrangle and prepare for Film Florida Friday each month. We're back next month with another great discussion about navigating the film grant writing process. So be on the lookout for that in email blast and our social media pages. Matt had a good plug for that before, and he didn't even know it. As always, thanks to our Film Florida members for their continued support. If you're not a member of Film Florida, we certainly hope you will consider joining the organization at filmflorida.org. Keep up with everything we're doing on our social media pages. Just search for Film Florida, and make sure you check out the Film Florida podcast, which is now in season 7 and available on most major podcast outlets. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Thanks again for joining us today, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you, John.
Thank you all very much.
Bye.